Perfect. Thank you very much. Right, on to item 15, Auckland Council submission on the term of Parliament. And I would like to just acknowledge, even though Warwick is not retiring or anything, but 45 years and 10 days ago, you started work at, I think, Manukau City Council. So 45 years of service to our city in different ways and different councils, and of course, the length of the Super City Auckland Council currently. So just want to, maybe just a quick round of applause from everyone here for 45 years of service. So thank you so much, Warwick, and I know there was a little celebration for you recently as well. Would maybe just go to Warwick first, and then...
Tēnā koutou, Mr Chair and members. The bill proposes that a term of Parliament could be extended to 4 years by way of a proclamation of the Governor-General based on the advice of the Prime Minister, provided Parliament's passed a resolution confirming a proportionality requirement has been met for the membership of select committees. The proportionality requirements to ensure that the 4-year term is balanced by enhanced accountability of the government through select committees having membership that's proportionate to non-executive party membership. This could mean that the term of Parliament would vary. Sometimes it would be 3 years, sometimes it would be 4 years. The thrust of the draft submission we've put together is to say that the term of local government should be in sync with the term of Parliament. This means that the term for Parliament should be fixed, regardless of whether it's 3 years or 4 years. The draft submission does support a 4-year term, which is consistent with the position taken by the governing body on its submission in the previous term to the Future for Local Government panel, and more recently its submission on the Electoral Reform Working Group. I need to note, though, that support expressed previously has not been unanimous, and acknowledge that Mayor Brown has previously opposed a 4-year term for local government. However, ultimately we see this as a constitutional matter and needs to be put to the public by way of referendum. The Independent Electoral Review Panel noted also that because this is a constitutional matter, there needed to be engagement by the Crown with Māori. When we previously consulted with Māori on the submission to the Future for Local Government about a 4-year term, just note that one of the comments we got back seems to make a lot of sense, is that it's difficult for them to lock in strong relationships when government changes regularly. So just in summary, Mr Chair, the draft submission recommends that parliamentary and local government terms should be aligned, and that the parliamentary terms fixed, and that if there is a referendum, that it includes a question for local government.
Thank you. And I think Councillor Walker wanted to move. I'm happy to second. I just had one question because I didn't want to put it up as a chair's rec without discussing with anyone, but this is just my view, and you can just say absolutely not. But my thinking was that we should have elections in the same year, whether it's maybe not the same time, but maybe April and November or something, and then we have 3 years of delivery. I would like to put that in, but I don't want to blindside anyone or have a big long debate. So if it's not something that people are interested in, maybe just a show of hands if that went in or not.
Sorry, to have central government and local government elections in the same year?
Just for the select committee to consider what that would look like.
And the same methodology around elections.
Yeah.
What happens when a Prime Minister calls an early election?
Well, that would be regardless, I guess. But
he's only asking for it to be looked at.
I'm just asking for
all the answers.
That's okay. If there's a majority of people, I'm happy. If Councillor Walker's happy to put it in, I just didn't want to put up an amendment and debate it all day. Okay, I'll work on a piece of, and if you don't support that, you don't. Yeah. Any questions for Warwick? Member Ashby.
Kia ora, thank you. And thanks for the report. I guess the first thing just to point out is obviously there hasn't been engagement with mana whenua Māori into this, but it seems a missed opportunity not to have engaged with our Secretariat on haukura, particularly given any changes to local government, for example, terms would have what would that mean for haukura, basically, given that we also have members sitting around the table here. So I think from our perspective, there's just some questions in terms of why our Secretariat weren't involved and what those implications of this would mean for our process. And I suppose to the point of the resolutions involving us or a delegated member in finalising it, what would the point of that be given we weren't involved?
Warwick, if you maybe want to answer why haukura wasn't involved, and then we can either discuss keeping haukura in or out of the delegated group.
Well, and just a general comment in terms of implications for haukura and, frankly, for other co-governance arrangements. If the local government term goes to 4 years, then there may well be flow-on effects in terms of members, the term of members on co-governance entities and on haukura might go the same way. But that's a bit of a detail, and I'm just speculating. We didn't contact haukura as part of this process. I apologise for that, but we were really pushed. Well, just as a general comment, it seems that Parliament seems to be giving very constrained timetables in terms of people making submissions. Normally we would report this sort of submission, which is to do with constitutional and electoral matters, to the governing body. But the closing date for this is the 17th of April, which is prior to the next governing body meeting. So it's an excuse.
Thank you. Just through the chair, thank you. Just noting there was time to talk to local boards, but not to your independent Māori Stat board. So kia ora.
Yeah, we'll definitely take that feedback on, and Warwick will pass that on, as I know that most generally that they do try their best, but I think we have fallen short on this situation. But I do understand Warwick's point that, and we've given that feedback at almost every item this year, that this has been extremely tight time frames for everything from central government on such big issues too. But granted, we should have been working in with you. So have a think, Member Ashby, if haukura still want to be part of that delegated authority. I would like you to, or a member to be, but if that's not what you want, please, we can remove haukura from that.
Just through the chair, we may as well leave it up because it's an opportunity for us to participate, but I'll take it. I need to take that back to the board. Thank you.
That's right. And a question on that, just is there opportunity after this meeting for a broader discussion with the Secretariat and others with haukura on this issue before it comes back to the delegated group, just so there's a bit more opportunity for discussion? Yeah.
Yes, certainly.
Thank you.
Though I mean, if this draft submission is resolved at this meeting, there might be some limits on the degree of change we can make to it. Yeah.
Oh, I guess more engagement on the topic, and I'm sure we can judge as a delegated group how much change or what might need to be brought up, such as the effect on haukura. Councillor Leone.
Yeah, I'm just reading through everything and just trying to see whether there's any way that we can also provide the feedback of having the voter system similar to the way that central government runs theirs, because, you know, I know that we were told it would cost us about 11 million if we were to run the system ourselves to the same effect of the way that central government run voting. So like, can that be included, or is it just specifically on the 4-year term, which I actually do support?
Through you, Mr. Chair, specifically on the 4-year term. There seems to be a vision developing that into the future local government elections will go to the Electoral Commission, and because of the decline in postal services, probably go to booth voting as well. So it'll be a very similar process for local government elections and parliamentary elections.
Okay, so we don't really need to add it, it's already, okay.
Councillor Turner, I'm not sure, did you have a question on this one? Cool, sorry. Councillor Darby.
Thanks. Look, I don't think it's just this government that's giving us very short opportunities to provide feedback. I think the previous government, they're all guilty of, treating local government like it can turn itself around and get answers properly. But look, that's not the point I want to make. Warwick, can you just explain, in the bill, they are recommending, a 3 to 4 year term, but there's a check in there. There's checks and balances that are put in place if we do go to 3 or 4 years, like select committee proportionality. Can you just explain that as a check and balance and other checks and balances? I mean, I can read it, but I think it's really important to have the discussion of the importance of checks and balances when considering a longer term of government by a council or, the government in Wellington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We could go into that in some depth, but briefly, New Zealand, there isn't the degree of separation of powers that there is in some other countries. The executive is formed from the majority party within the parliament. There are in other places, checks and balances are provided through a bicameral situation, for example, upper house, lower house. What is being proposed here is that the checks and balances will be obtained through having opposition members, a majority of opposition members on select committees. I struggle to imagine how that would work. So at the moment, we consult on stuff and Parliament consults through its select committees. When you consult on a policy matter, you're saying to the public, look, this is what we think. What do you think? Let us know. And as a result of that, the original proposal is improved. But if you've got a situation on a select committee where there's a majority of the opposition parties on it, and it's a controversial matter, and the opposition parties have promised their electorate that they will oppose this particular point at all stages, then you get a situation where the report from the select committee back to Parliament, that process could be used for opposition parties to actually try to overturn the original bill. But when it gets back to Parliament, you've got the government back in the majority, and they'll just revert it again. It's difficult to see how that process could avoid being politicised, if that makes sense.
So in that regard, we're supporting central government looking at a referendum on 4-year term, but we're not making any strong comment on that proportionality question. No, the way the bill's written, they're coupled. So don't we need to actually discuss that? Because the way the bill is drafted, or mentioned at the moment, I don't know what stage it's at. I thought they were inextricably linked. 4 years, proportionality on the select committee.
That's correct. They're linked in the bill at the moment. The other argument against the bill as it's currently written is that how do you put that by way of a referendum to the electorate? It's too complicated. Referendum questions need to be simple.
I agree.
Yes, no.
So maybe we need to say that, because I think you're very limited in a referendum. You're allowed to ask 2 questions, I think, in a referendum.
I'm sorry, I
I might
can't
be
comment on that.
wrong, but a referendum does need to, distill to a very clear question. If it's a question which has got a very long sentence in it trying to explain proportionality on select committees, I think people will be lost. Maybe we comment on that. But now that I draw us to the conversation about our feedback, our submission, recommending a 4-year local government term. And my question is, and what I can't see is, what are the checks and balances that we are recommending on a 4-year local government term? Now, I did discuss this when we canvassed this, what was it, a month ago, and I talked about a biennial performance review of elected members. Now, some expressed no appetite for that at all. It's a 4-year term. So is there not, is there not now the opportunity to express support for a 4-year local government term, but emphasise that there need to be checks and balances to be put in place? Like, we could emphasise greater stakeholder engagement through citizens' assemblies, etc., or referenda. We could emphasise, and I've heard a number of councillors express a desire for hearing contestable advice, whatever guise that comes in. Introducing some kind of advice requirement that gives greater scrutiny to the advice. At the moment, it's officialdom. Unlike the Parliament, where you've got the Crown Law Office vetting advice, and there's that extra layer of scrutiny there. So my question is, why are we not expressing support for a 4-year local government term with checks and balances? At the moment, there is no suggestion in our submission, and I think that's a miss.
Through you, Mr. Chair. Certainly my intention was to just keep it a very high level. The question is 4-year term or not, really, and what sort of performance evaluation you introduce is a more detail level. It's kind of keep the submission simple and to the point, but like, it's in your hands.
If it makes, I agree with Warwick, but if I do get the opportunity to speak to Select Committee, I'm happy to say there should be consideration for checks and balances, which whatever they would look like. But you're talking a long time before referendum, any time it happens, and I'm sure any sort of change to rules and laws will come with options and things like that. I think to put that detail up, that's right now is...
I know, because we haven't got it. We haven't got the information, but I actually think that is fundamental. The writer of the bill is emphasising the need for checks and balances, and they propose proportional representation on Select Committee, whether we like it or not. I actually think we should not be proceeding with a 4-year unless there are clear checks and balances, and I think it should be conveyed through our submission.
Cool. I'll go to Councillor Sayers. I'll have a discussion with Megan, but I think, that level of detail is sort of mentioned, but it's not. Yeah. Councillor Sayers?
Thank you. So it's binding referendum, and it'll go to referendum during the 2026 elections. We're at the booth. So when will it be implemented, Warwick? So if it goes through, and there is, because it's a binding referendum, I guess I'm probably more curious about that because I haven't seen one before. But the process post that and how quickly something gets implemented.
I'm speculating here, but even though it's a binding referendum, I'm guessing that legislation would need to be drafted and go through the Select Committee process so that there would at least be an opportunity to make submissions before it's fully implemented. I would think, but I'm speculating.
Councillor Lee?
comment, so is completed, but in terms of Warwick coming before the council, can I congratulate him on the decision of the Local Government Commission to restore the original boundaries of the Waitemata and Gulf Ward, which I believe officers advocated in their initial proposal. So thank you, Warwick.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? I mean, maybe there's a question for me around Councillor Darby. Probably to be too prescript is difficult, but do you have any advice of what we could include? Okay, I'll go to Councillor Newman first.
So, Warwick, this is a constitutional question, therefore there will be a referendum which is binding. The binding referendum takes place at the 2026 general election. Then there is a bill which I assume would mean that in that next term of Parliament and the triennium that ran at the time, I presume would be extended out, would it? Or there would be a bill to implement the decision of the referendum if there is a decision in that referendum to move to a 4-year term.
Mr. Chair, I'm not sure of the answer to that. If there's a binding referendum, I'm not sure whether that's implemented for that coming term or whether legislation needs to be passed and that it's implemented for the following term.
Look, Chair, I just wonder, because we could really overcook this, but I mean, say whatever you like. I think it's an important constitutional question, but I'm sure that a referendum on the term of Parliament will almost certainly fail, pushing out from 3 years to 4. The last time a vote was had, nearly 70% of New Zealanders voted against extending the term. But I just wondered, Chair, if you were going to make a submission, you're considering C. I'm a little bit ambivalent, but I personally don't think that whether you have it in the election year or in the year preceding the election year, I don't think it should be at the same time, because otherwise the issues that ought to be debated in a local government election will be consumed by issues that dominate the general election. So I think that if you're going to have it in the same year, you would definitely have to lobby for that to be taking place at a different time in the year to ensure that there is enough breathing space so that some of the local government issues could be canvassed and not subsumed by the issues taking place in a general election campaign. And it really only works if it's a fixed term.
Speaking slightly out of turn, yeah, my comments, I think, to the future for local government were that it should be, say, April local government and November central government or something. So then you have, because my personal view, and I am speaking in the question time, is that we sort of have one shared year of delivery that's not back and forth or campaigning, and it would be nice to have 3 years of working with whatever government if there was a change. To Councillor Darby's point, it does say, I think leaving it as the resolutions as they are, the submission does say, provided it's back with public mandate, maintain strong accountability measures and is implemented in a way that promotes clarity and electoral integrity. I think if there was a change, then we would beef up what that would look like at that point. And if I could give some examples, including Councillor Darby's, of what the types of things we would expect, but I imagine that would be up to local government, not central anyway, potentially. I don't know. But is there any other questions? Cool. I'll get you to step back, Warwick. Just wondering to Councillor Newman's point, did you want me to change that to, but not at the same time or at different parts of the year? Okay. Okay. Yeah. Could you just say, but not at the same time? I don't want to start saying April and October and things like that. Yeah.
Chair, what section were you reading from? Because I read it, and I read those words applying to the parliamentary four-year term.
It says ultimately Auckland Council supports a 4-year parliamentary and local government term, provided it is backed by public mandate, maintains strong accountability measures, and is implemented
Yeah,
by
which section? Can you take us to the section of
It's-
attachment A, right?
attachment A, the last sentence.
Oh, in the summary, is it?
On page, where have I gone now? Page 379.
Yeah, look, that's just the summary sentence. I actually think it needs emphasising, just as it is.
Okay, what's your amendment then?
Well, I would suggest that we support moving to a 4-year term, subject to referenda, via referenda, subject to improved checks and balances being in place. Now, I don't have checks and balances on. Well, the checks and balances that you've spoken of, Councillor, like you've spoken about contestable advice, like scrutiny over, like the advice of officialdom, like the Crown Law Office scrutinises, bills coming through. They've got those checks and balances. We don't have those checks and balances the same way. And I think that's the sort of thing I'm talking about. And I'm talking about strengthening of community engagement by way of things like citizens' assemblies and our own referenda. So I'm happy for the, Megan to actually, word up what those checks and balances, might be. I'm saying that they're missing at the moment.
Yeah, to me that it's in there, but if the words added to that sentence were just said, so accountability measures implemented in a way that promotes clarity. I mean, this will all be done if it was rolled out, I would have thought, but if there was another sentence that said if there was another sentence that says further checks and balances, yeah, but I don't think it needs to be in this submission. We can ensure by
Make the change.
Yeah.
In the text.
Yeah, we'll make the change in the text. Is that okay, Warwick? We'll just that part where it calls it out, we'll just say and further checks and balances. But I don't think we have anything worked up to.
We can definitely make some additional changes to the text to make that clearer. Councillor Darby, is that helpful?
Cool. Are we going back to questions, or we're now at comments? We're actually in comments. Councillor Walker, comment.
Well, I've really gone off C. The more I think about it, and I've heard what Councillor Newman has said. I mean, you just reflect on it. I mean, an election, irrespective of whether it's a local government or national government, is over months. 6-month period. You got hoardings and the like. Hell, you don't want the hoardings all up at the same time because there isn't enough space. You talk about practical things like delivery, people getting totally confused. If you want to confuse things, really, that's the way to do it. It just doesn't add up to me. So I've gone off it altogether, and I'm not comfortable with it there, and I'm the mover. So I don't know about you, Mr. Chair. I think you're the seconder.
But you're allowed to.
But I'd prefer to take it out. I just think it really just, it doesn't make any sense at all.
We're in debate, so we can just note opposition to certain points if you'd want. Councillor
So
Henderson.
if there is a vote, I'll be voting against that, and I'd like that taken separately.
There will be a vote. Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, look, I can jump in and move to help out if you want, because, I'm in favour of C. I think it's good. But I just wanted to briefly touch on the checks and balances issue. We've got heaps of checks and balances. We have to consult on the LTP. We have to consult on the annual plan. The government can raise and lower taxes. They don't have to go through the hoops that we have to do. But the other thing is that there's a real alarming. If we start talking about that stuff, there's an alarming element to that. Be careful what you wish for, right? This council and other councils are strident and rightly so, in opposition to being controlled by Wellington rather than our own ratepayers, right? And so if we're starting to talk about, oh, we need further checks on our own power, central government hears that and thinks, okay, well, we're going to take even more away from councils. I don't like that. That's a bad idea. The other major thing that they can, I mean, this parliamentary supremacy. They can come in tomorrow and take away anything they don't like us doing, right? They can also appoint commissioners. They can do all kinds of things. We got way more checks and balances than they do, I would suggest. I just don't want us to talk about that, to be honest. Thanks, Chair, but otherwise I support it.
Thank you, Councillor. Are there any other? Councillor Lee.
I think this is an excellent report. I do have some concerns about the council muscling in on this initiative. I think the idea is to have a referendum on the parliamentary term of office, not local government. Why the government thinks that there be any support for extending the term of Parliament, one has to wonder. But in terms of our own involvement or attempted involvement in this, one has to wonder even more, given the consistent level of council support and trust and confidence revealed in our own year-by-year polling. I don't think it's likely to go down well. Coming back to the bill itself, as the report points out, we've had a 3-year term of Parliament in this country for nearly 150 years, and we're not a particularly old country as a nation state, but in terms of a democracy, we are one of the leading, or have been one of the leading democracies. France, for instance, is a great country, a great nation, with a great long history in terms of democracy and human rights springing from the French Revolution. They only gave the vote to women in 1944. It's a long time after New Zealand. So the 3-year parliamentary term is pretty well unique to New Zealand, but I would suggest it's a highly valued aspect of our democracy when it comes to the public. And in terms of checks and balances, the more we have of them, the better. So I agree with Councillor Darby on that. However, the only real meaningful check and balance that the people of New Zealand have over the politicians is the term of office, because they can vote them out. And that is one power that cannot be taken away from the public. And I think we need to respect that. So, yes, certainly I would support, given the government has proposed this, that we support a referendum. And given the results of earlier referendum or referenda, I don't think, given publicity about Parliament in recent times, it's going to have much of a show, to be frank, but there you go. But what I do oppose is the idea of council muscling in. Now, or piggybacking on this bill to extend its own term. In effect, we really have a conflict of interest here, members, because our term of office, our contract, if you like, is very, very much in the same category as our pay level. And it would be a conflict of interest for us to be voting on our pay levels. And similarly, I believe, the length of our contract with the people of Auckland in this case. So I'm uncomfortable with that. And in some ways, I think that if we succeed in piggybacking in on the parliamentarians' bill, we're more likely to sink it. That being said, I have to record my opposition to the council being involved in or seeming to be lobbying or trying to extend the term of office of elected councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Darby.
Look, just reinforcing, now take the point of Councillor Henderson there. I know Councillor Henderson and I are poles apart. I'm a fan of the participatory democracy. He's a fan of the representative. I got elected, I'm in charge, it's my vote now. I have a different view. I have my vote now, but I actually want to have systems in place whereby I can hear the ongoing and dynamic views of Aucklanders. Now, that's the difference, and that's what I'm suggesting here as one of the checks and balances. And the other check and balance is having that contestable advice. You know, citizens' assemblies to check the views of Aucklanders, referenda to check the views of Aucklanders, to actually input those in a genuine way into our decision making. I didn't get here just to have 3 years of Chris Darby votes. I did not. No way. And so my view is very different. I do think that the future is a participatory future. And I remind ourselves that the voter turnout in Auckland to get us all elected around this table averaged about 34, 35%. With 21 to 26-year-old, it was a miserable 20%. And we think we're really important around this table in having our votes because we were elected by so few people, And that's why I stress the importance of making sure that we actually give this feedback to the Parliament so that we can see the construct of something better that shows greater confidence in going to the ballot box and electing a mayor and councillors, because 34% is not really remotely a strong remit to do much at all. And that's got to change. So that is why I'm stressing these points today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right, all those in favour? Any opposed?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm against C.
Cool.
I asked for that to be taken separately.
Councillor Walker is a note on C. Councillor Watson. Councillor Watson and Turner. Yeah.
I never thought you and the mayor would agree on anything.
Right, item 16. We've moved on now. I'll move. All those in favour? Item 17. Councillor Henderson and Councillor Dalton. All those in favour? No extraordinary business. I'll close the meeting. Unuhia, unuhira, unuhia. Ki uru tapinui, ki wātia, ki mama, tinako, te tinana, me te wairoa, iti ara takatū kuia rā e rongo. Whakairia ake ki ranga ki tina. Haumie huie tai kie. Have a good afternoon, and we did get through a lot of items before 5 p.m.
Well done.